Welcome aboard, history adventurers. You're listening to the Adventure Box podcast, the only podcast where we sail through time like an ironclad battleship and vote like a union depends on it. Because, well, it kind of did. I'm your host, Zach Edwards, and today we're going to time hop to the tremendous year of 1864 again. Now, if you missed it, we talked about the wars during 1864. That's the Sherman March, the Overland Campaign. Those are great. It was a great podcast on Monday, so you got to check that out if you haven't heard it. Now, this is a moment when the fate of the Civil War hung not only on the battlefield, like we talked about on Monday, but also in the ballot box and in the battleships. So, let's cover two things. Like we promised, we're going to be talking about the 1864 election between Lincoln and his former general, that's a little awkward, McClellan. And then we're going to be talking about the second thing, which is naval warfare. So if you don't like the politics, you don't want to hear about these things, hold on, listen through. This is really exciting. And then we're going to talk about something that's very exciting, more action-packed, and that's the naval warfare. It was less than yoo-hoo, and more of a boom, splash, steel-plated hulls exploding, those type of things. So grab your stovepipe hat and your sailor's cap. We've got democracy and destroyers to explore. So here we go. We're going to be talking about the 1864 election between McClellan and Lincoln. I got an image for you. This is great. This is one of the political cartoons from way back then. The true issue, or that's what's the matter. So they were basically fighting over the Union, McClellan and Lincoln. Okay, imagine running for re-election. This is Lincoln. During a civil war, your opponent says you're incompetent. The country is literally on fire. And your main rival is who? Your own general. A guy you fired from his general's post years back. So, welcome to the Abraham Lincoln's 1864 election. Let's set this up. Okay, Lincoln was president. The war was dragging on for 3 grueling years. The death toll was high, and many Americans were wondering, is this guy actually going to win this thing, or are we going to fight this forever? Meanwhile, on the other political corner, you have George B. McClellan. Now, he was former commander of the Union Army, decided to run for president against a man that booted him a year back. It's the political version of you're not the boss of me anymore. Huh? Yeah, that's right. It's just what it was. You had McClellan that had been fired from his job, and now he wanted to get back at his boss. And you had Lincoln, who was in a very grueling 3-year war that was not ending. Now, like we said, both the Overland Park campaign, the Overland Campaign, and also the Marshall March. These were the Sherman March were 2 important battles that were happening, campaigns that were going on during this time, because Lincoln was not being seen as a very strong leader because he wasn't winning. Now, Lincoln ran under the new National Union Party, basically Republicans plus war Democrats. His VP, vice president, would be Andrew Johnson. He was a Southern Democrat. Strange choice, right? But it was a smart move. Why? Because he was a Southern Democrat. You had all those that sided with the South. They wanted Andrew Johnson there. So like, okay, I think we could do this. And you had on the other side, McClellan. He ran under the Democratic Party. Now remember, most of the Democrats were down in the South with a platform that, wait for it, called for peace negotiations with the Confederacy. Wait a second. What? You're just going to give up your war that you're going to win? That's right. McClellan thought it was a never-ending war, and he was going to negotiate for 2 different countries. That's right. Some Democrats were basically saying, let's end the war and make nice with the secessionists. McClellan, he awkwardly disagreed with his own party platform, but still ran on it. Yeah, classic Civil War politics. If McClellan won, the Confederacy, I don't know, would have likely gained recognition, maybe even their independence. If Lincoln won, it meant total commitment to victory and the end of slavery. So this was quite the battle. They had to win. Both sides felt they had to win because of the war. One, though, wanted to win. The other one wanted to negotiate a reasonable outcome, which means slavery would have been would still have been there for however long afterwards. So things that made Lincoln look bad at first. By summer 1864, the weariness was everywhere. Everyone wanted the war to just end. Sherman was stuck outside Atlanta. He had not conquered Atlanta yet. Now, Robert E. Lee and Grant were already in the process. So that's where we are. So, let's see. Lincoln basically, because everyone was weary of the war, Sherman was stuck outside Atlanta. Lincoln feared he'd lose and even wrote a memo preparing to help McClellan transition peacefully. So even Lincoln himself thought he might win because the people were done with the war. But then, boom! September 1864. What happened? We talked about it on Monday. What happened? Sherman captured Atlanta. The Union celebrated. Confederates returned. The war momentum shift. Lincoln's campaign goes from, well, this was fun while it lasted, to, we've got this. We're going to win. This is when basically McClellan knew he was not going to win the war. Now, before November, when the election happened, what happened? Sherman's march. Sherman marched through the Confederacy, burning everything. News was getting out about this, and people were seeing the wins. Because of the wins, everyone was willing to give Lincoln, or a lot of people were willing to give Lincoln the chance. But would it be enough? I got a great image for you. Next image here. This is what happened. Now, the brown states, the lighter brown, are territories. They don't vote. The darker brown are Confederate states. You have Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. They weren't in the vote. But you did have Oregon, Nevada, and California. Those ones were actually in play. Those were states in the Union. Then you had Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia. Remember, it split. Pennsylvania. You had Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Whoo! And if you look, the number underneath with how many votes they had for the election. And as you can see, Kentucky, that went to McClellan. Let's see. New Jersey, McClellan. Delaware, McClellan. But everybody else went Lincoln. Woo! Lincoln wins in a landslide. It's 212 electoral votes to McClellan's 21. You had Kentucky that had 11, Delaware that had 3, and New Jersey that had 7. Made up his 21. That was it. Every Union soldier overwhelmingly voted for Lincoln. The people said, finish the fight. Get it over with. We're done with it, but we think you could actually win it. Instead of negotiating for peaceful separation between the two countries. Again, remember, McClellan did not believe in it, but that was his party. That was the Democrats' line. That's what they wanted. So, in one of the most important elections in U.S. history, during little chaos, Americans still lined up to vote. That's democracy, baby. Civil War edition. That's right. Now let's switch gears. As I told you, you want a little bit of excitement in this, and the election politics not so exciting. The Navy warfare and blockades. How about ironclads, raids, and ramming speed? That's right. That's what we're going to be talking about next. Here it is, the naval battles. Okay, so I could have dressed up as a pirate, but not this time. Okay, but I'm going to try something. Let's just try this. Okay. Arr! Okay, I'm just kidding. We're not going to go there. This wasn't just swashbuckling. It wasn't parrots on the shoulder kind of war. The Civil War at sea was about technology, blockades, and big old ships. Yeah, you might say boats, but it's not a ship. It's not a boat. It's a ship made of iron. That's right. No more copper on the outside. No more just wood. When those cannonballs hit, they might penetrate, but they might just bounce right off. The Union naval strategy was blockades. It's called the Anaconda Plan. It was a shout out to General Winfield Scott. It was basically a surround the South by sea, choking off trade and squeezing slowly. So all the foreign aid that was supposed to be coming in was being stopped by the Union ships. The Confederate Navy, they did have ships. We're going to get that in a second. But they had a different strategy. So, by 1864, the Union Navy had over 600 ships. They were building as fast as possible. And you know what? It is so much faster than it is today. And they don't have the technology that we have today. So it's quite interesting how it takes like 10 times longer to build a ship than it did back then. Remember, we had a summer up in the Great Lakes during World War American Revolution, or during the War of 1812. I think it was the American Revolution, where they built like 10 ships in one summer. From the end of winter to the end of the summer, they had like 10 ships in the Great Lakes because they had nothing before. The Americans were able to build that. So how in the world does that happen? Now, here's another question. How do you block 6,500 miles of southern coastline with those 600 ships? Okay, you're like, well, that's not hard. It's like, what, 5 feet or 5 miles for every ship. I could see 5 miles within the next ship. But here's the problem. Do you scatter all of your ships out? And then possibly those ships could be taken out one by one? Or you have them in what is it called? Clusters. There you go. Well, this is how they did it. They had the 600 ships, and they blocked 3,500 miles of southern coastline, especially when you get into the harbors. They were blocking the harbors more than they were blocking just the sea. So that way, they could have a cluster of ships all blocking specific ports in the Confederacy. But as you can see from this picture, it was all the way around the coast. So there's a lot of coastline to cover. Anything that could be thought of as a harbor, they had to control. It made it nearly impossible for the South to export their cotton and import weapons from foreign countries. It was slow, it was boring, but it was completely effective. Now, the ironclad ships. This is the big thing that was on the Union side. There weren't your average wooden ships. They were encased by iron. So these were basically floating tanks before fully metal ships came out. The USS Monitor was the Union side. The CSS, so Confederate States, were the CSS Virginia. This is the Confederacy, formerly known as the Merrimack. Yeah, Merrimack for the Union. It was taken when they started separating and made a Confederate ship. So their famous battle happened back in 1862, at the very beginning. But now we're in 1864. Ironclads were being used to blast through ports, protect rivers crossings, and also terrorize enemy fortifications. They looked like metal shoeboxes with cannons, but they changed naval warfare forever. The Confederates, though, on their side, They were thinking, let's do raids. Yeah, since the Confederate couldn't match the Union naval ship for ship, they had to get creative and also sneaky. So this is what we call the commerce raiders. Ships like the CSS Alabama sailed the high seas, attacking Union merchant ships around the globe. They went around and they just sunk them. They would gather what they could, sink them. The reason why they didn't try to take all the goods from all these ships, they weren't pirates, is because all those ships that were going out, you sink them, the Union never gets the support. You can't take all that material from those ships and put it on your ship and still stay sailing forever. Plus, it weighs you down. You need to go fast. These raids were basically maritime mosquitoes, you could say, biting the Union economy wherever they could. Fun fact, I got a fact here. The CSS Alabama sank over 60 Union merchant ships before it was sunk off the coast of France in 1864 by what? The USS Kearsarge? The Kearsarge. I don't know. Something like that. USS Kearsarge. So, who says the Civil War wasn't just about Gettysburg? I did. It was not. It was grit. It was about battles on land and in sea. Now, here, let's talk about the blockades. So, some daring captains used fast, shallow ships to slip past the Union blockades. They were like a Formula One driver in the 1860s, weaving past the Union ships as fast as possible under moonlight, delivering guns and tea and luxury goods to the southern ports. So these Formula One racers, known as the blockade runners, they were dangerous. The life was dangerous. But yes, it was very profitable because you can't get anything there. They're willing to pay you whatever they can. And they had gold. They had lots of gold. And if they got caught, boom, what happens? Ship seizure. Game over. You're done. So, the Union actually tried not to sink all those ships. They tried to capture those ships. But they'd sink them if they had to. And yes, the Civil War had spy ships. They had ironclad brawls and moonlight smugglers. It was basically a season of Pirates of the Pontiac. Or Potomac. So, instead of Pirates of the Caribbean, it was Pirates of the Potomac, the southern states. Okay, so this is what was so fun, so great about this time. It wasn't just about bloody wars with men being shot on the battlefields. That's the sad part about the war. But you had the boring part, which was also exciting part, is you were waiting out in the ocean, waiting for a ship to pass by. You went after that ship. What would happen? You send one ship, a fast ship, or maybe a slow ship. Send a slow ship, and it goes in, but your military ship's going to go after that ship. Okay, this is when you send the fast ships right into port. And then you do the same thing. You pass by with another semi-slow ship, and the Union ship goes after that ship. And you have the raiders running out at the time. So those fast ships were running in and out of the ports as fast as possible. Going in, going out. They also had spy ships. This was cool because these were like merchant ships that were going into the Union area. And they were collecting data. They were collecting information. You also had the Union ships that were going into the Confederate harbors, passing by the Union, getting more information, finding out how they were doing, bringing in a little bit of supplies, but taking out a lot of information. It was totally worth it. So this was the year of 1864. This is what we covered this whole week. 1864, just 1864. It was more than just blood and bullets. It was about decisions. Okay, first decision, most important decision, was to re-elect Lincoln. It kept the war going for basically one more year, and then it was done. But if he hadn't, you probably still would have seen slavery well after the Confederate became its own independent country. So, what else? What was another decision? To invest in technology to win the seas. You win the seas, you block the merchant ships from coming in. You block the merchant ships from coming in, the South starves. They starve, they end the war. Again, it's this black, white, and gray area. You can be evil and just want death for the South. You could be very nice, but then everyone's going to take advantage of you. It's going to be the middle. You're going to try to do everything possible to stop the war by hurting those in the South. Not the people physically, but mentally, emotionally, economically, everything. And the decision by soldiers, sailors, and voters to see it through the end. They were there, ready to fight until the end of the war. It was the year when the Union pulled together by rail, by river, by ballot box, and said, we're not done yet. Not until the war is won. And because of that, they were able to win the war. But that's going to be next week. We're not going to be talking about that right now. So thanks for sailing and voting with me today on the Adventure Box podcast. My name is Zach Edwards, your ironclad loving, beard measuring, that's not that long, historically nerdy host. Next time we will be talking about the final ending of the Civil War. So until then, stay curious, stay resilient, and always keep questing. So, I got an action item for you. I almost forgot the action item. Where would you have wanted to be a soldier? On the land, in the sea? I would say in the office if you wanted to be a general or something like that, but we're going to keep that one off. If you want to say that you want to be there, great. But we're going to sidestep that. Would you want to be on the sea or would you want to be on the land? Fighting, bullets, raids, those type of things? Or would you like to be in the boring ships waiting for the next ship to pass by? Let me know. Put it in the comments below. Send me an email, zach@historicalconquest.com. I'm excited to hear it, and I'd love to answer it. I will even read it on this video if you send it to me fast enough, because we're almost done. The Civil War actually ends next week, and then so does these podcasts for a little bit. So stay tuned for more information on next year, because we've got we got the Middle Ages, and we've got the later U.S. history. These are ones that we're going to be working on next year, but we'll be finishing them, or we'll be releasing them for the following year. We do actually have a 5-box set for this, so that you'll actually have 5 boxes that will come for this time period, the Middle Ages and the late U.S. history, but we won't be doing all of them. Releasing those will be the following year. So stay tuned for more information. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great day. Keep questing. Take care. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.